Good evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, set as we see it, and frankly as well. 3,000
but it's the
horsepower.
next iteration of an existing system.
But it's a design, it's not manufacturing anything.
I think there should be, there are restrictions. You have to be licensed to carry a weapon.
Addiction, and I think that if we took a more compassionate approach, we might find more of a solution.
Radical swing of the pendulum. Now we're, more liberal, more progressive, more.
It's time for us to honor those folks who, send comments to us.
And good evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, set as we see it, and frankly as well, with myths to dispel. I'm Joe Spina, and after a week of sabbatical, my co-host.
Hi, Joe.
How you doing, Paul?
Good. Sorry I couldn't make it last week. Had some work commitments I couldn't get out of, but I'm glad to be back for sure. Lots to talk about, isn't there?
Oh, a bunch. And
by the way, can I just say that I am so impressed that every week you're able to say that little missive that you do in the beginning, and not mess it up. I could never do that. And then you're even adding things to it now.
Oh, we have to dispel myths, Paul. That's
dispel myths, right?
Part of our thing. We're going to take a little spin around Lynn.
Spin around Lynn.
How's that?
What's going on in Lynn, for sure?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there was a bus tour. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but apparently they gathered a bunch of us, something in the order of 100 developers.
Potential investors.
Contractors, lenders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and some of the local folks, they all want to beat their chest about the promise of Lynn. I've been hearing about this promise for probably 60 years.
Right.
So they took a little bus tour, I call it the Lynn Express, and driving around. But there's a counter argument here, and it always bothers me that there's a group always resistant to some, let's face it, it's a good idea to take a bus tour of the city of Lynn for investment and development. Agreed?
Sure, yep.
Okay.
We want to get people aware of what the opportunities are. A lot of times investors really don't need to have somebody give them a tour of a community, whatever. But Lynn has, something of a bad rap that it has to kind of overcome as well. And so maybe this is, in all respects, a good opportunity for people to dispel those myths, as you would.
Right. Very good, Paul. You picked up on that. You and I spent a little time this weekend knocking the ball around Gannon, which, by the way, is in great shape.
Yep.
And
Love
remember,
that course.
I do myself. Do you remember when we were sitting on the second hole and we looked out at the reservoir and it looked like Mars?
It was parched. Was the thing that came to mind. I mean, I've seen it low.
Yeah.
You see little puddles here and puddles there, but it was dry, and you could tell that the dryness was into the soil. It wasn't just gone at the top. And there's a serious drought going on in this area.
Yeah? Glad for this rain. The reason why I point that out, over and above the fact that I was absolutely shocked, because you don't realize it until you see it, and you could see it very well from that second hole at Gannon.
Yep.
Is that one of the great selling points in the city of Lynn? And folks, we gotta talk it like it is. We have a great reservoir system and a great water supply. I have not noticed the drought, and I doubt that any of the Lynn citizens have.
Somebody told me, and I think it might have been Steve Babbitt. You know Steve?
Yeah.
Steve is a very strong supporter of, the Lynn Woods and conservatism and that type of stuff. And Steve once conveyed to me his opinion that many hundreds of years ago, the forefathers of the city of Lynn made one of the best decisions they ever made. It was establishing the contract with the folks that control the Ipswich River, and it's kind of in perpetuity. Mm-hmm. We get our water from the Ipswich River, and nobody can ever stop it. Lynn is, and water is it's becoming more and more obvious that water is a critical resource, which is, reasonably inexpensive and so forth, but when it's gone, like you were pointing out in the reservoir, then what?
Paul, you and I, humans, are 85% water to start with. I mean, that's such a vital, talk about vital element, it is the element.
So that would mean that the other 15% of us is just a talking head, right?
Yeah, pundits. So, anyways, development's a good thing, the bus tour is a good thing. And I asked you a question, and I'll ask it to you again, because there is a group out there who say no gentrification. Gentrification, sorry, thank you for correcting me. Yeah, and they say that. In effect, what that means is, they want all public housing, or the great percentage of public housing. And the question becomes, and they advocate that housing is a human right. I'm not so sure that's accurate.
Well, you know, I have a hard time with this thing. I mean, in the role I play at GLIS, I mean, we are constantly trying to help people who are either homeless, at risk of becoming homeless, have lots of circumstances that come into play, and you know, it's very difficult for them. And we do everything we can for them, you know. And a lot of what we do for them is to try to get them to do for themselves, because a lot of times, two things happen. One, you have somebody who is homeless or at risk of being homeless, and to some extent, it's their choice to be homeless. They, you know, by choosing not to, you know, do what's required from a landlord, you know, whether it's keeping your apartment clean or paying your rent or not being a problem for the rest of the residents and so forth. These kinds of things are important to the whole thing. And if you're going to tell me that I have the right to be in that building, but I'm not responsible for, you know, working to have a meaningful or not, I guess what I'm saying is, so I'm not a problem for the rest of the residents, that I'm not putting people at risk because of my, you know, issues. You know, there's a lot of things that come into play here, and I guess to me, it's very important. It's very important for people to participate in their own well-being. It's huge. There's a social compact out there. That social compact is very clear in my view, and that is that individuals have the responsibility to comply with kind of the overall kind of cultural norms and so forth. And in exchange for their compliance, there's a certain amount of expectation that, you know, the government, the social fabric will support your help. But it's a two-way. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always heard of the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, right?
Yeah.
And you just came up with the 2 R's, which is really, really an interesting point, which, yeah, rights and responsibility. And so if they're out of sync, then the equation is wrong.
Right. So, for example, you know, do you and I have the right to housing, a place to live? Absolutely. But we have a responsibility to do our part to accomplish that end. It's not a either or.
It's not a giveaway.
Yeah.
And
by the way, what would happen if so healthcare is a right, you know, all these things that, you know, that the Democrats continue to bring up of rights. Eventually, I think, and I don't know how long it will take, but eventually, if we keep adding things to that list of rights, eventually being a billionaire will be a right.
Of course, mink coats and Mercedes-Benzes.
Right.
Yeah, that becomes a right. Let me end this segment quickly with this. Unless you have development, you can't have anything.
Right.
Because development, if everything is affordable housing, they don't pay enough taxes to be able to carry the load for the expansion and benefit of the greater good, right? So the greater good is to create an economic base and revenue source in order to be able to pay for these other things, fund these other things that make us a civil society.
Which is, you know, there's a balancing act, I think, between providing affordable housing to the residents of the city of Lynn, as well as, you know, encouraging investment. So there's a balance between people that come into the community and, you know, gainfully employed or spending their money in the community, you know. One will push the other out if there's not a kind of a balancing act going on.
That's the key.
Right.
Thank you, but no thank you.
Thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah, thank you, but no thank you. There's this gorgeous, pretty ugly. It's a Romanesque building on North Common Street. I believe it's North Common. Is it North? Maybe it's South. I don't know. But it's
South.
the old Armory. You know, and
Yep.
it's apparently the state owns it.
Yep.
And they've been using the registry of motor vehicles for some reason. The license application's been using it.
That's where you see I see the kids there in the morning when I'm coming to work. They take their driving test from there. You know, they'll pull
From
up
that building?
Yeah, that's that kind of where it gets started.
Well, they want to sell it to the city of Lynn, and Mayor Judy says thank you, but no thank you. And I'm looking at it, and you know, it's the irony of it all is that it is National Register of Historic Buildings. So from that vantage point, I would think that Chuck, you know, Seth Moulton, is that his name? Because he only shows up when he wants a photo op. It would be incumbent upon him to say, listen, if this is a National Register building, the federal government should step in and, you know, gear it up and give it its renown. But in any case, the mayor has refused to buy it.
I think the price tag was pretty hefty too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Like
1.7 million.
Right.
But the city has to pay market value. That's a covenant from what is it? DCMM or whatever they.
DCAM.
Yeah. It's one of those sophisticated operations at the state level.
Right. It's the bidding rules. You know.
But here's the irony. What happens is this: if no one decides to purchase it at 1.7 million, which would be great for our tax base if privately owned, maybe it can become a dispensary for marijuana, medical marijuana. But then it goes out on auction, and
Right.
you know that they're never going to get 1.7 million for it at auction.
Yeah, I think that's unlikely. Yep.
But I would think that it would be incumbent upon the federal government, right, or our federal representative to the government, to think about perhaps preserving it as a national monument, which it is.
Well, I think in essence, there's no guarantee that it would be preserved by a private owner. A private owner could conceivably tear it down. Hopefully that wouldn't happen because it is kind of it's a cool looking building and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
but the other thing too is maybe, and I don't know this to be true, I don't have any inside information on this, but maybe the mayor said it's not worth 1.7, but that doesn't mean I won't bid on it when it goes up for auction.
that's a good point, Paul. She's a wise woman then, if she does that. On Armory, I want to get this point across from a historical perspective. Folks, an armory is simply a place where you put your arms. Like if you're going to Dodge City, you know, the old days, you could not go into Dodge City unless you took your guns off and left
Right.
them at a place otherwise known as an armory, right? In Rome, you could not go into Rome. You know, you had to get your sword and put it in there because they don't want you, you know, OK Corral type of stuff.
Right.
That's the whole purpose of an armory to start with.
Right. And what's interesting is, you know, with the raging debate over gun safety, or is it gun control? You know, there's no talk about armories in any way, shape, or form, is there?
No, and it's okay to have an armory. That's where you get your, you know, the citizen tree gets its arms if in fact it needs them. So there's a lot of bickering going on. Did you know that?
Bickering?
Bickering.
Well, it's that's because we're about a year away from the next local election.
Oh, you are so profoundly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that you know, I remember when the day Judy Kennedy won the first time.
Yeah.
At the inauguration, it was pretty clear by the remarks made by the council president at the time, Tim Phelan, that he was running for mayor in 4 years.
Nowhere to be found now.
Well, but you know, there's a whole kind of strategy around, you know, putting out feelers and
But
trial
isn't that what
balloons
everybody?
and-
Wait, Paul. Let me stop you. Isn't that what everybody is sick of? The bickering. Aren't they sick of everything that's predicated on politics? In other words, not on the merits. Now, here's what happened. The bickering takes place because the mayor of the city of Lynn did not want to fund a position that she thought was superfluous. Correct?
I'd say from her perspective, that's what. Yep.
Right. From her perspective, she's saying, hey, we don't need to spend money for a position that she deemed to be unnecessary.
Right.
Now she turns around, and everybody went up in arms. Brian LaPierre led the charge on that one, right?
Yep.
So I suspect he's thinking of running for mayor, among others.
Yep.
So what happens is she came along and she says, we need a librarian, an assistant librarian for whatever reason. It wasn't as expensive as the other position. All of a sudden, they're opposed to that. Why?
Right.
So the issue is,
they'll come around if she fills that position, I guess, right?
what are you saying?
So if she funds the position for the election commissioner, the city council will support the,
Okay, so now we jack up the cost of government doubly, right?
when we can't afford either, right?
Yeah, exactly. When we're running a deficit.
Well, the interesting thing in all of this, and I read this in the paper this morning, this is Tuesday, we're taping.
Yeah.
But I read in the paper this morning that the woman who was going to be the licensing commissioner
Proposed.
is no longer in line for that because she's just been appointed to be the head of the public health department.
So that's a threesome. So if
Well, no, I mean, the public health position opened up because
I understand
Mary Ann
that.
O'Connor moved to, took the job in Medford, so it opened up. But,
you could retire some of these positions, upon retirement and things.
Oh, I know.
It never
Hey,
happens.
Look, I said this when it happened. I said it to anybody who would listen when they were talking about who was going to get the job when Bob Tucker retired.
Yeah.
I said, why don't we just eliminate the position?
Oh God, no, that can't happen.
But
That
it can't
makes
happen
sense.
because there's so many things. It's the it's bad, but there's a it falls. That one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. For example,
Yeah.
think about who benefited by Bob Fennell taking the position.
At the Lynn Water Sewer Commission,
Right. Who benefited the greatest?
the council president,
Right.
among others.
Who
But the
was
council
ultimately in
president.
charge of making that decision?
But if you take a look at the graphic that we have up there, the council president and the mayor sitting there smiling at each other.
No,
You
I
get
know,
what I'm trying to
and
say?
look, and I think that-
yet you know that he might have, and he may entertain the idea, and he's a wonderful guy, by the way.
I think the world of him.
to take a shot at being mayor. McGee is looking at it seriously. Now, here is the irony of it all. I don't know why they do this in the paper. All of these different prospective candidates for mayor, the next election. So was it 2 years off? And if Tom McGee decides what, they all drop out.
Right.
They're matching on his.
Clear the field, as they put it.
They clear the field. Yeah.
Well, and that's tragic, don't you think?
Of course.
I mean, and I used to
It
say
also
this before.
it's also a lack of profile and courage.
So you just take the Bob Fennell, right? Bob
Yeah.
Fennell was the state rep for, I don't know, maybe 18 or 20 years or something like that. And except for when he ran the first time, he never had an opponent. I mean, nobody of any credibility that, was a formidable opponent. In other words, once you become the elected official, it's yours for life.
And many
Or until you get a better job.
well, that's a good point.
And
Hope is
that's-
arising.
By the way, I need to say something,
Yeah.
and because I don't want to make it sound like I'm picking on Bob Fennell or Dan Cahill. I'm just talking about the general way that politics works. It's about lining yourself up for jobs and so forth, and it really is part of the whole culture, don't you think?
Dan Cahill?
Not just here in Lynn, across the board.
Dan Kill, you have a standing invitation to show up anytime you like, or anybody else. When you were absent, I tried to get him. He was tied up. He had a conflict, but he would have been on. So, everybody has a right to come on and have their views, but let's talk about some realities here. And hopes are rising, by the way, on the sheriff race, because the sheriff race has some implications. So we have 7 hopefuls who are praying, who will work overtime to make sure that Chief, you corrected me the last time, Chief Carpenter
Chief Carpenter, yep.
becomes the sheriff.
There are 7 people that hope that happens?
Oh yeah, 7.
Just 7?
7 front runners. You know what I mean? It's like
Oh,
going to Civic
you're
Dimes.
talking about who would replace them.
Exactly. So there's 7 hopefuls who are going to go off there gangbusters. Now, interestingly, if you pick up your commentary sheet, and by the way, folks, thank you for all the comments. We'll get to them at the end of the show, and they're really, it's really encouraging to us, Paul, that so many people are taking an interest in the show.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anyways, and this is a comment regarding the Essex County Sheriff's race, which works into this. And let me read it in total to you folks, and Paul, you and I can both comment on it. Why does a chief of police want to be sheriff? Which is an interesting question. Is he not near retirement from his job? What about the conflict of interest, as his department will be in charge of guarding the ballots on election day? He should have taken a leave of absence. Martin is the only one with experience in this area.
Well, first, I got to say that I don't see, there's no connection between the chief of police being the, one of the potential winners of the sheriff race and the police department guarding the balance. I don't see any connection there. First of all,
wait a minute. Let me ask this. Let me ask the question. Should, regardless of who the chief of police is, should the chief of police have taken a leave of absence from his job? That's the question.
He didn't, so I don't know whether he should have.
So it depends on which way you want to look at it, right? I had never thought of it.
Right.
All right, that's number one. So I want to go down break down the points. Is it a conflict of interest that his department oversees the ballots?
I guess if you think about the seven, the seven people that might end up, one of the seven are going to be the chief in his absence, right, when he leaves. So in theory, those seven people would want to make sure that Carpenter won, I guess, right? So to open up the position. But what if there's somebody in the police force that really likes Carpenter and is afraid that the new guy won't be as good as Carpenter, so he's not going to want to see it happen. So I'm not sure that.
But I see it as a very remote.
Yeah.
A remote thing. I have more faith in the integrity of the chief.
And that's, I think, the most important thing is, the police are doing their job. They're not going to be playing games.
The integrity of the department
Yes.
and the chief, I think, just wipes
I
that out.
wholeheartedly agree.
Okay. So, let us move on to, guess what, Paul? There was a march, a walk against violence. And I want to throw up a quote by John F. Kennedy.
Okay.
And it's an interesting quote. He says, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable." That is so profound. That is happening as we speak. Once again, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable.
Black Lives Matter.
Right down the line.
Right.
Exactly.
And Hillary Clinton supporting, basically.
She did last night.
What did she say last night? She said that
Systemic racism.
We are implicitly racist, all of us.
Systemic and implicitly racist in all categories. So, we have this good thing. Now, do you know anybody that's a fan of violence, by the way, Paul? Have you run across any human being that you know, any rational human being that's in favor of violence?
No.
Okay. So, we look and strive for peace. We're not always successful at it, but we strive for it.
So, just a point on that. So, I was reading a story about all the violence down in Charlotte over the killing of the kid there. Kid, it was an adult.
In Charlotte.
In Charlotte, right?
Yeah.
They arrested a bunch of people. 70% of the people that they arrested in Charlotte were not from even the state of North Carolina.
So
they were all bussed in to raise havoc.
You're talking like, this is a George Soros tactic, your favorite guy.
Right.
This is the left. This is exactly what Kennedy was trying to point out. Those folks are irrational. They're not interested in making peace.
Right.
Okay? So they're not interested in peaceful revolution. And actually, let's talk about evolution. Most things are evolutionary. They gradually change.
Right.
Your attitudes change as you mature, which is a good thing because that's the way it ought to be. Occasionally, you need a revolution, a fast, rapid, radical change. So, I want to give some bouquets to some Lynnites, Capano,
Peter,
and
yep.
John Ford, and is it Fred Hogan?
Freddie Hogan, yeah.
Yeah, those three really were the principals who put together this walk against violence, and I find that to be a very positive thing.
And the three of them, I think tag team a lot on matters like this. They're very strong sponsors of They call it the Shoe City basketball tournament that they have every summer, where they bring all the kids from the neighborhoods in to play each other, and it's spirit of competition, and it's devoid of violence and all
Yeah.
that. I mean, they're always doing great things on that front.
So if those three guys were in South Chicago, they wouldn't be shooting each other as much as they are now. I mean, because if you have involvement in the community, if you take kids to ball games, if you show your face that you're sincere about things, good things happen.
Sure, that's right.
That's it. The great divide and the great debate, Paul. It's time.
You want to talk about the debate last night?
Oh, we have to. And I don't think it changes a thing.
I know you were telling me that before the show, I think when you look at the results of the debate purely on substance and form and all that kind of stuff, certainly Hillary Clinton was well prepared and articulate and just kind of kept banging out the points. But then again, you got a guy who really speaks off the cuff, and Donald Trump, who pointed out something I think is very correct, and that is, she's kind of robotic about what she's doing, and it is just talk. She's been around for a very long time, 30 years, as he said, and she hasn't made any meaningful change yet. She's talking about all these things that have to happen and that she's planning to do. And it just reminds me of the state reps who were running for the Westland seat a couple of years ago. They have their 5 points, their bullet points. Boom, 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 boom. We need better education, better safety, better this, better, And that makes them electable? I don't think so. That doesn't really
So what are you telling me? You're telling me that Hillary actually lost the debate then, because she did not knock him out of the bar.
Lost debate. The debate.
Hold
it
it.
depends
I don't
on how you
care.
clarify.
I don't care about preparation. I don't care about what they call
how you define
points.
it. But
I care about what is the key issue. The key issue in this race is change. That there's been a failure over the last 10 years or so, right, of government. We're going in the wrong direction. Now, is she an agent of change?
not at all.
Okay. Is he an agent of change? That's what he's relying on.
Right.
So, she tried to paint him consistently. She spent $200 million in the battleground states, viciously attacking him as a homophobe, racist, misogynist, xenophobic, unfit, unhinged, over and over and over again, right?
Right.
Did he appear that way on TV last night?
He didn't appear that way at all. And by the way,
That's why he won.
And he didn't spend a nickel, and he's winning in all the polls.
He's ahead in Colorado.
Yeah.
That's given a. He wins
Pennsylvania.
Colorado and Pennsylvania. Forget it. It's over. And it's right now 538. The great guru. A month ago, he had a 10% chance of being president. Today, it's 50-50.
Right.
And may go the other way. You have to watch this thing play itself out. Now, Lester Holt did not ask. He was responsible for any of the questions asked, correct?
Yeah, he even said
He
at the
did
beginning.
not pick one area, and he had many, that would have been disadvantaged Clinton.
Right.
All right? And he chose everything that was disadvantaged Trump, correct?
He picked on Trump and he didn't pick on Clinton. Right?
What I'm talking about, he brought up the birther issue, he brought up tax returns, and things of this nature, and not once did he bring up Benghazi,
Or
the Clinton Foundation, which pales, the corruption there pales to anything else, and others. So when people say a debate, well, the debate and the tone of a debate is set by a moderator. And I'm saying to you, I thought it was blatantly obvious to anybody that pays any attention that's a fair, broker, that Lester Holt was not objective.
Well, what have I been saying to the audience that watches our show? If you're relying on your information from ABC, NBC, CBS, and Lester Holt is the anchor for the NBC Nightly News.
Now think about this, though. Go ahead.
So if you're relying on him to be a honest broker of the news of the day, you're not being properly informed.
Well,
he proved it again last night.
He had a problem because he's the same station as Matt Lauer, and everybody vilified Matt Lauer for playing down the middle.
Right.
So he had to recuperate the status of his network
Right.
by
Right.
satisfying those people that wanted to see
Right.
Trump go down the chute, and they tried to do it in a subtle way. It did not work. That's
Right.
my point to you. So consequently,
He's looking for a job in the administration. He wants to be the spokesman for the White House spokesman. I'm only speculating when I say that, but I mean that's what I've been reading about in the news. I mean, Lester Holt, he's got him for a job, and he's certainly not going to get a job working for Donald Trump, but he has a chance to get one working for Hillary Clinton. So what do? You do everything you can to help her get elected, so you'll be in line for that job.
let me throw.
And that's a very cynical view, but it's very consistent with the way politics works in this country, as we were talking about earlier.
Let me throw something at you. This is from left field, of course, when I go on one of my tangents. Isn't it fascinating that you have Roger Ailes and you have Steve Bannon working with Trump? I would suggest to you and to you folks out there that win or lose, Donald Trump is going to be the alternative news. He's going to create a news outlet, a cable news outlet that will replace Fox, which is moving rapidly to the left, and he will pirate most of the talent from Fox over to his Trump network. You want to bet on that?
Sure. But let me just say this. I think that the idea that Fox is moving to the left is, I mean, they're not going to become another CNN, MS.
No, but they're moving from the left to the
What
left.
they're doing is they've shown their true colors, if you ask me. And what I mean by that is they are really just the other side of the argument that establishment politics and the ruling class elite really do exist, and that's what.
Well, I'll give you an
politics is
example. Megyn Kelly must have a big investment in Gillette because she's got the razor blade out every single chance she's got to put another slash into Trump. She is hardly objective. She is blatantly, above anything else, trying to cut him down.
Right. Well,
and she puts people on as her guests who support her view. The judge last night, Napolitano.
Yep.
And he was just off the wall. Dana Perino was George Bush's spokesperson.
right, which means
She
that she's
is
going to
right
be
up the alley of the Bushes. If you think that
up the alley. Is that what you said?
yeah, up the alley, I said. I didn't say any bad thing. But what I'm saying to you is Dana Perino is definitely supportive of the Bush family and their point of view, which is anathema when
It's
Trump.
establishment.
Exactly. So she's a globalist.
Right. Well, look, you know who the biggest opponent of Ronald Reagan was in '79 when they were running? It was George Bush.
Yeah, voodoo economics.
Right. I mean, because he wasn't part of the establishment. So
And what was his great pledge, Paul? Read my lips.
right, no new taxes.
And what did he do immediately?
He raised taxes.
Exactly.
So you were talking about. I have to bring this up because I have a presentation I need to make. So you were talking about the things that Lester Holt didn't bring up at the debate. He didn't bring up the Clinton Foundation.
No.
He didn't bring up Benghazi. But he also didn't bring up,
Emails.
But how about the basket of deplorables?
Yeah. I mean,
So, by the way, in the basket of deplorables, for anybody who didn't hear that, most people did hear it, is Hillary Clinton basically accused half of the Trump supporters of being, racist, misogynist, sexist.
on and on and on
right.
and on. Yeah.
That's the basket of deplorables, right? So,
Yeah.
so I know this is not a scientific poll, but I don't believe that I'm any one of those things: misogynist, sexist, homophobic, blah 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 blah. So if
According
I'm not,
to you.
so if I'm not,
Yeah.
that must mean that you are, right? So I figured I'd get you a shirt,
And?
and I want everybody to see it at home.
Oh,
because
God. You're proud to be deplorable.
proud to be a deplorable.
I want one of those.
This is for
Where'd
you.
get it? Yeah, I love it.
By the way, Joe had a birthday the other day. I'm not allowed to give out your age, but apparently
can.
So you had a birthday on Saturday.
Yeah.
And happy birthday, Mr. Deplorable.
Ah.
There you go.
I hope you got triple extra large.
You know, if it doesn't fit, you can.
Oh, God.
You can exchange it, maybe.
I just want to see whether you. It'll be a tight fit. You know, I was there before I quit smoking. Since I quit smoking, I've decided to. Let me put it this way: munch a little too much. So therefore, I can barely stay on my toes on a good day. Anyway, I'm really struck by what isn't said. For example, they try to get him on NATO.
Yep.
They try to get him on foreign policy, things of this nature. If anybody out there thinks that the Barack Obama administration, Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, did decent work in foreign policy area, I don't know what the...
Well, I mean, I know he missed a lot of opportunities, Trump
I don't know if he
but,
did.
But one that he didn't miss was pointing out that all of the instability in the Middle East and in Africa, Northern Africa, is all her and his fault. Meaning
That's true. Interventionists.
Right.
Nation. But let me go one step further on this NATO thing. What is wrong with revisiting an institution, an alliance, that was created when there was a Soviet Union, which no longer exists? That was the whole purpose of it, right? Okay, so it needs to be revisited. And his point is well taken. We're $20 trillion in the dink, right?
Right.
And by the way, which was doubled during the Obama administration.
And part of that going that deep in debt is because we pay an outsized cost to participate in all of these programs. Paying 73% of the cost associated with
That's
NATO.
right. And the other countries aren't paying their fair share, and we're spending to defend them. And so you and I can drive over potholes and ruin the front end
By
of
the
our
way,
cars.
speaking of fair share, you know, one of the opportunities that I thought Donald Trump had last night he never jumped on was when Hillary Clinton went off on him, you know, essentially cutting taxes for the rich. She called it trumped up, trickle down, right?
Yeah.
Remember that whole thing? It was a perfect opportunity for Donald Trump to say, "Are you kidding me? Look at all the people that are your supporters. You've got Soros, billionaire. You got on and on. All the people on
Cook
Wall
from
Street.
Apple, Bloomberg. Yeah, and by the why do you think
She has more. She's protecting the wealthy more than Donald Trump could, even if he was trying to.
Paul, I've said this before. You've heard me say this. Hillary Clinton is the perfect Republican nominee.
That's right. Right. She's exactly what the Republicans want. The establishment
Precisely.
Republicans.
She is exactly what the Bushes, she's exactly what the Chamber of Commerce, Wall Street, all of the up-crust people, the country club said, that's what they want. She drinks Chablis. Now, here's the best one. Here's a classic. Nobody's upset about this. Talk about an infamous allegation. You don't remember Howard Dean?
Yep.
Disgraced candidate for,
Right.
with a crazy
He
laugh.
started screaming.
He's turning around and he's suggesting that because Trump was sniffling last night, might have a cold or an allergy or whatever, legitimately, that he's on coke. So it's all over he's accusing him of being a coke addict. Now, anybody that knows Donald Trump doesn't drink, doesn't smoke,
Right.
neither kids because his brother was an alcoholic.
Right.
And he loved his brother who died of it, so he's not addicted. He may be addicted to cheeseburgers, but he's not addicted to alcohol or coke or the rest of it. Why are they spreading junk like that around? We
Because
know
they
that
got nothing else. That's 'cause they
Barack
have nothing
Obama
else.
did snort coke, self-admitted.
The reason they're doing it is because they're throwing everything they can at this guy because they can't beat him on the record. The Democrat record is flawed. It is bad for the country. The inner cities are screwed for the last 50 years. Democrats have been running the inner cities, and look at the inner cities. They're all, the education systems are flawed. There's a lot of crime, violence, and it's just not fair that what's going on. And to somehow turn around and say that that's somehow Trump's fault or even Republicans' fault when it's always run by the Democrats, to me is just like, how can they say that stuff with a straight face? Just like how can Howard Dean say that he must be doing coke with a straight face? And the reason is they're okay with lying. any
They accuse him of lying.
ends justify the means. That's
Machiavelli.
that's their mantra. There's no question about it. They don't care what they say as long as they get elected.
So the truth of the matter is that the public is wiser than we give them credit for, right? I mean, when you have the Cincinnati Examiner, is that the name of the paper in Cincinnati? And the one in Dallas, and the Post and the Times in unison just before this, when they saw Trump surging, trying to blunt it by killing him in the editorial pages, not doing any good. Right. Because here's the point. Everything in the world's been thrown at him, and he's still standing. You know why? Because he's essentially correct. And by the way, Paul, you know what I can't stand? When they say, give me specifics. I never heard a specific from Hillary. No. Where is she being specific? They think that she's a policy wonk. She's not a policy wonk. They give her some lines to speak.
Right, she practices them over and over and over and over and over again.
They're not prescriptions or check my, I have a plan. What do you mean you have a plan? I haven't heard your plan. Where's your plan? And by the way, plans are no good. People don't go with someone that has a plan. Plans invariably don't work because the variables change, but they won't change the plan.
Right.
They won't adjust them. But here's the thing. The key to anything is to identify the problem.
Yep.
Once you identify the problem, then you start working at potential cures. You can't just say, okay, I have hypertension, therefore I'm going to avoid salt.
Right.
That's only part of the equation. That's my plan. No. How about maybe avoiding sugar, salt, certain foods, this, that? How about a little exercise? How about maybe it's just congenital?
Right, and all of the above a strategy.
Which is what Trump is talking about.
Right.
Now, if you're going to go to war against ISIS, would you give them the blueprint of how you're going to attack them?
Of course not.
So they want specifics on how you're going to defeat ISIS. Well, if I tell you, then I'm telling ISIS, aren't I? So it's self-defeating. Why do all the generals and the admirals line up with him? Why is all public safety lined up? Every single police department and enforcement agency in the country is backing Trump.
They're
Why?
looking for a real leader.
Right. On the border, which wasn't brought up. Talk about immigration, big issue on the border. That didn't come up at all, did it?
No.
Why?
It's not
Because
convenient
Hillary's
to
terrible in that
Hillary
area, right?
it's not
She wants
convenient.
open borders, right? Now, he said something, they're going to try to get him on, when he mentioned that some of this violence that you see is at the hands of illegal immigrants. If they're illegal, they're prone to crime to start with, right?
I suppose, yeah.
And they grab guns, do they care? In this country, shoot somebody if you're illegal, they make you a citizen.
Well, I think it's important to say two things. One is that not everybody that comes into this country illegally is going to commit additional crime.
That isn't the question, Paul.
But the other thing is, and Trump never said that.
I know he never said that.
Right.
The point of illegal immigration is it's illegal.
Right.
Is that hard for anybody to understand? Illegal means not good.
Right. And the bigger problem is that the inability of us to absorb all of these folks coming into this country
Even
is
if it were
becoming
legal.
more and more right. Even it's becoming more and more obvious because look, just when I was on the city council, let's just say 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So in 2006, my first year on the city council, the school enrollment in the city of Lynn was about 13,000, right?
Yeah.
In 2010, they did a census and they said there was 91,000 people in the city. And it had not changed at all from 2000.
Talking about the universe.
Right.
The universe. Okay,
right.
go ahead. But
2016, the enrollment in the city of Lynn school system is 16,000.
what do you attribute that to, Paul?
Immigration. It's
But
not
you're telling me the population of the city of Lynn has not increased, and yet
the
school-
official population hasn't increased.
the official population.
Right.
So you're suggesting that a lot of people are living in the city of Lynn.
And look,
And their kids are
I'm
going to
not
school.
saying get rid of them. I'm not saying. All I'm saying is if you just keep them coming and keep them coming, it's harder and harder to educate people in this.
And who wants open borders, Paul?
Democrats.
Not just Democrats. Judge Bush wants open borders.
Right.
Mitt Romney.
Establishment,
Right.
because they're globalists and think.
Why? Why do they want them, Paul? Cheap labor, someone to cut their grass, right? They want them as peons. They want to
And the-
exploit
and the
that.
Democrats-
That's precisely what happened in the, and that's precisely what happened in the inner cities, to which Trump is trying to do something about it. Now, don't forget, in Mar-a-Lago, and nobody gives him credit for that, when he started, he fought for inclusion. He fought for Jews. He fought for African Americans to be accepted as members of, in fact, they were, and Mar-a-Lago, when the rest of them had prescriptions against that.
Right.
Yeah, but nobody talks about that one, right?
He tried to mention it last night. He didn't do it. I don't think he did a very good
He
job.
didn't push it hard.
Right.
You know, there's a perverse modestness to his bombacity, if you want.
That's a good way of putting it, but you're right.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to our commentary, and we're going to have a nice little thing. There's, if you take a look, Paul, there you
Okay.
and I are with commentary, and the very first one goes back to when you were down in Washington, D.C., fighting for the senior citizens, and we had an author on, Tim Quigley, and he made reference to the Gloucester Police Department on opioids, and so our commentary was this. He said the program that he's talking about from Gloucester makes sense on the face of it. However, I would, meaning the respondent here, I would make it contingent on their telling the police where they purchased the drugs from so the authorities can access to the higher-ups. That's a great point, isn't it?
Yeah.
By the way, when do they ever arrest, as an aside, the wholesalers? It seems it's always the street people or the next layer up, but it takes a very large organization to distribute the stuff. You know, we can apply this to Hillary Clinton, that the uppers never go to the can, but all the lower echelons go to the
There's
can.
another thing that Trump could have got her on pretty good last night is, she was talking about, the being unfair, criminal justice system, but she was referring to, that minorities are in jail more than whites. But what she didn't say, and which is really true, is that her ilk and above don't ever have to worry about going to jail, but everybody below is, who can't afford to defend themselves the way she's able to defend herself. I mean, can you believe all of the things that she's had to do to defend herself? The slow walking, the denial, and you say, well, that's old news. All the angles that they work to try to get out of any kind of trouble. I stood in front of Congress for 11 hours. I have stamina. Why were you in front of Congress for 11 hours? Because you did some despicable things as a Secretary of State. You sold your office to a number of people. You hid it all with your emails.
Paul, she lied for 11 hours. She didn't testify.
That's right.
So, anyways, point well taken. We have a comment from our September 7th show, and this is to you, Paul. One must know that the Democrats control almost all the media. As a comment, here, Sunday night, 9/11/16, I understood Hillary was taken away from the 9/11 ceremony in New York due to health issues. I do not seem same anyway. I have not seen anything anywhere. Here on my computer, there was one very small article and a video was blocked. One has to wonder. In effect, what they're saying is that the media clamped down on her collapse, as if it never happened.
Oh yeah, they're pretending it didn't happen. I mean, I saw a video of her. This was, I don't know when the event actually occurred, but it was a video of her, and she, she kind of starts laughing uncontrollably, and her head kind of goes like this.
Yeah.
I saw that video, and then I saw what happened on 9/11 when she had her back to, and she was surrounded, getting ready to get into the van, and then they had to lift her up and pick her into it. And I saw her head you saw her head bobbing up and down. There's something wrong there. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, although sometimes I do have a tin hat. But my point is, there was a consistency between that video of her, where she has some uncontrollable actions, her head bobbing around. It was consistent with what I saw there on that day. And by the way, she did not have pneumonia. There's no way. I've had pneumonia, and it kicks the crap out of you. You don't go from being like passing out 1 minute to an hour and a half later being in the best of health.
So why don't you ask Howard Dean who's actually taking the opiates, right? Donald Trump or her? I mean, don't forget, they have to load her up with medication to keep her rocking and rolling.
I'm sure. Yeah.
He's like an Energizer bunny, irrespective. The last thing he needs is juice. So, by the way, I want to thank folks here. On September 14th, our show, Joe and Paul, great show. Thank you very much. Let's beat our chest a little bit on that one. And lastly, how about charter schools? This is someone who would like this to be discussed, and maybe we'll put this together for our next show. How about charter schools and how union people on the council don't want the same, even though it has been shown to help students? Now, putting aside whether that statement is accurate or inaccurate, there is a point to be made about, for example, the affiliations that people on the council have. For example, Brian LaPierre is an agent for the teachers union.
Right.
So, if issues pertaining to school choice were to come up with charter school, should he recluse himself?
I would say yes, right? I would think that. His position has to be absolutely pro teachers, right? Teachers union, I should say, not pro teachers.
So he really can't look at the charter issue with an objectivity, correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
All right.
This should be about the parents should be deciding whether this is.
What about a broader issue about union affiliation? For example, Peter Capano is active in union.
Yeah,
but that doesn't apply.
We need to draw the line, that kind
right.
of thing. Yeah.
So that does not apply to the schools per se. Would not be in the same vein.
Well, I had a debate with somebody recently about the whole charter school thing. It's going to be on the ballot this November and so forth, and they want to expand.
Charter school is going to be on the ballot?
It's going to be an opportunity. If it passes, they will be expanding the number of charter school licenses
so that's a good subject for us to take a look at, huh?
Yeah. What's interesting is I only see it one way, and surprise, surprise, I only see it one way. But the way I see it is it's about the kids, right? We're talking about educating the kids. I hear the Democrats, liberals screaming about choice and all that kind of stuff, except for when they talk about this, because they're trying to protect the union. What about the kids? Is there anybody that's going to support the kids? And I don't understand, how anybody, a teacher, a teachers union, elected official, can, with a straight face, argue with it's about the kids, and that should matter more than anything. And if it only is about the kids, it's clear we need more choice. The only argument I hear is that it takes money away from the existing system, and while I understand that and I find that problematic, it still doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to figure out a way to create more choice. It shouldn't be a monopoly.
On that note, Paul,
and you're a teacher too.
I am retired. On that note, we'll discuss this issue in a lot more in detail objectively, but we have plain run out of time. Paul, you were eloquent.
Can I try to squeeze something in? Any chance
Squeeze
of
it
squeezing? Just remember, we're voting on expanding charter schools, and we're voting on recreational marijuana. What would it say about the state of Massachusetts if we said no to expanding charter schools and approved recreational marijuana?
A question for our next show. Ponder that, folks. Have a great week.